So, guys, our social media feed is growing exponentially, isn't it?
Yeah, remember when Nick said that he would send us cider if we crossed 2,000 followers last year? Well, we're in a different stratosphere now. Our questions of the week are really gaining traction.
Uh, Nick, where is my cider?
Yeah, and we have a lot of newsletter followers, and the thing is, they're almost entirely in the wine trade, so we represent a pretty sweet demographic. If I owned a wine business, I would totally sponsor us.
You know what? I would too. And hey, if I did want to sponsor the Four Top, I would reach out to our sales manager, Zoe at thefourtop.org for more info or check our website and social links.
Wait, Ruby, did Nick send you cider?
Yeah, it was a strawberry cider. It was delicious.
Nick, where is my cider?
Have you seen the TikTok wine reviewer who dressed up like Lord Farquaad and gallivanted around the city?
N- no, Zoe Davis, sales manager. Tell us more.
This is what happens when you're chronically online. Evan Hathaway on TikTok is this really amazing music and wine reviewer. And while scrolling the other day, I was bombarded by his very accurate Lord Farquaad impression. Not exactly what I was expecting when I landed myself on Wine Talk, but a happy surprise considering the state of the world right now.
Wait, I feel like I need you to back up. I'm sorry, you guys, but who is Lord Farquaad?
Oh my gosh. As a proud card-carrying member of Gen Z, that is quite offensive to us, but it's
Sorry.
the villain from Shrek 1.
The original Shrek?
Yeah,
Oh, I saw
very
that. Okay. Yeah,
yeah,
Yeah. He's the very short, bad
the bad guy.
prince, lord, I
Prince
guess.
Lord, yeah. All I can remember is his giant bear rug and his very hairy chest. Like, I think that was maybe the scariest part of him as a child, but in hindsight, he's kind of like just a silly little guy. I
Okay, so but yeah, bring me back to Wine Talk. So this
Yes.
guy's dressed as Lord Farquaad. He's on Wine Talk.
He's on Wine Talk. Normally, his content is essentially he picks an album, he picks a specific bottle of wine. Last week, I guess it was Cowboy Carter and Tannat, which I thought was an interesting
Oh,
combination. And as somebody who has kind of an interesting history with wine, in that, like, I grew up in the industry because my parents being winemakers, it's really interesting learning about wine from people who don't have such a technical background. So
yeah.
hearing somebody say, when I wanna open up a bottle of Tannat, the first album I wanna throw on is Cowboy Carter. It's kind of just an interesting dichotomy and kind of just an interesting way of thinking about wine and consuming wine in a way that's not, structured around a tasting room or a tasting menu. It's kind of just it's like a very silly, goofy internet way of drinking wine.
Well, I love that he's throwing around the names of sort of obscure grape varieties like Tanat. That's cool.
I want to go back to the fact that this guy dresses up like Lord Farquaad and then goes to like a Sabrina Carpenter concert or a Sixers basketball game and just like interacts with people, which is I think is the best.
Yeah, he's kind of like turning into his own little villain in that way, or maybe like I don't know, some sort of anti-hero. 'Cause there's
Hmm.
something quite, like, intimidating about seeing a grown man run around in, like, a jester costume, essentially.
So our takeaway here is if you don't want to think about upcoming election, which by the time this airs, it will have been the election that happened yesterday, you can instead interact with this what's his name? Evan Hathaway?
Evan Hathaway, yeah.
All
Okay.
right.
That feels like the most jovial way to approach what is probably a historical and monumental moment in history.
But we don't know what's going to happen
We
I
don't
yet.
know
don't
what's going to
know.
happen.
I don't like living through the middle of a history book. It's really exhausting.
It's weird because this episode is unstuck in time in that we are currently before the election, but
Mhm.
you will be hearing this after the election.
Right.
Ugh.
Hmm. Well, thanks for top sales manager Zoe Davis. We look forward to you keeping us apprised of all that is happening in social media related to wine as you help us communicate with our wonderful sponsors. So, thanks.
And folks, don't worry, Ruby still exists and will be back. She's just gone today.
The rain in Spain does not fall mainly on the plain. Fine wine is in decline, but some producers still shine. It turns out Nick is not the only thing that likes to get drunk in the woods, and Napa can handle the heat. I'm Catherine Cole, joined by Nick Toole and Ruby Welkovich, and this is your favorite wine news podcast, The Four Top.
This past week, the central eastern coast of Spain along the Balearic Sea has been devastated by flooding. As we record this, the search is still underway for survivors, and more than 200 people are known to have died. Thousands of civil and military emergency workers are searching public spaces such as shopping centers and garages for more victims.
Yeah, the Valencia and Alicante wine regions were hit hard, with the storm and floodwaters deepest around the city of Alzira. That's about 30 miles south of the city of Valencia. The before and after satellite imagery of the region is stunning. This section of the Spanish coast, well, it's not really a coast anymore, it's just underwater.
And it sounds like this storm took people by surprise. According to The Guardian, public anger has been mounting over this crisis, with citizens accusing leaders of delaying emergency alerts, resulting in lives lost. On Sunday, Valencian protesters threw mud at Spain's Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez, as well as the regional Valencian president and the Spanish royals, King Felipe and Queen Letizia.
Literal mudslinging.
Yeah.
The protesters were apparently shouting killers and get out.
Yeah, and I was thinking about how this could have affected the wine industry. I took a look at the Spanish agriculture journal F.A. Agro to see what growers are saying about the crisis. And I read that 35,000 hectares of vineyards have been flooded in the Requena Utiel appellation. That's about 86,500 acres of vineyards. I can't even wrap my mind around that. Almond orchard owners are reporting that water levels are at 2 meters in their orchards. That's about 6.5 feet. So it's difficult to see how a vine could survive that as well, particularly if we're talking about head trained vines that are lower to the ground. So I'm sure we will be getting additional bad news from growers in this part of Spain in the coming days.
There's been heavy rain up and down the east coast of Spain, with roads closed and trains and flights canceled as far north as Barcelona. Now, of course, this is coming after 3 years of intense and persistent drought in Catalonia, as we've reported previously. So our viticulture friends in Spain just cannot seem to get a break. Birds do it, bees do it, even educated fleas do it. Let's
Let's
do it.
do it. Let's
Let's get
fall in love.
drunk. No, sorry, Catherine. I'm actually writing a parody. You know why?
Because you're a wannabe Weird Al?
Yeah. But also because I recently read in Science Daily that some animals drink alcohol, like a lot. Y'all ever seen a drunk animal?
Well, I definitely saw a drunk scorpion in a bottle of mezcal the last time I was in Mexico. Did I drink that mezcal? No, I did not.
I don't believe that. But I meant like in your life. For example, like when a bird crashes in a big window at your house.
Oh, yeah, I actually wrote about this in my book, Rose All Day. When I was growing up, there was a Rocky Mountain ash behind my house, and the berries would ferment on the tree every fall. And the birds would eat the fermented berries and then just fly into the windows of our house. So my
Oh my
mom called the tree the Rocky Mountain Crashberry Tree.
god.
Okay, that illustrates the point exactly. It turns out that animals get drunk all the time. Like, there's a scientific paper about a moose getting its antlers stuck in a tree after eating fermented apples.
Imagine that walk of shame dragging a whole tree home with you. This reminding me of Amarula liqueur. Maybe you've seen the bottle. There's an elephant on the label.
Yes, I actually wrote about this a long time ago. The story behind Amarula liqueur is that elephants and baboons in the southern part of Africa supposedly wait for the ripe marula fruits, which they look kind of like yellow plums, to fall from the trees and ferment, and then they eat them and basically have a wonderful time. So long ago, people saw this and they started making this traditional fermented beverage out of the marula fruit. So that's where Amarula liqueur comes from.
So, a paper that documents many examples of animals and insects getting drunk just came out last week in the journal Trends in Ecology and Evolution. The authors observed that ethanol, aka ethyl alcohol, or the form of alcohol that we drink, is naturally present in nearly every ecosystem and is consumed on a regular basis by most fruit and nectar eating animals.
I have to quote the best sentence from The Guardian's coverage of this breakthrough paper here. Male fruit flies turn to alcohol when they are rejected as a mate, while females of a closely related species become less picky about their mates and have sex with more males after imbibing.
Oh, that doesn't sound
Which
familiar at
is
all.
fascinating.
No.
Oh, well, I love this because this continues to explain why our human bodies are naturally able to break down ethanol. It's something that animals consume in the wild, and it's been around for nearly 100 million years. Alcohol is natural. And, Martin Reyes, Master of Wine, and I have talked about this previously on the Foretop a few different times, most notably, if listeners want to learn more about how our bodies digest and process ethanol, check out episodes 148 and 149.
And to hear one of the authors of the paper talking about this, tune into the November 2nd episode of the CBC podcast, Quirks and Quarks.
Whoever named that podcast was definitely drinking some Amarula liquor. Liqueur, excuse me. But you know what? It works. It totally works.
It will surprise no one to hear that this past growing season was blazing hot in Napa Valley. The surprising part is that the grapes were actually fine.
Yeah, according to the Napa Valley Register, the Napa Valley grape growers and Napa Valley vintners are all saying that record hot temperatures in 2024 actually did not negatively affect the vintage, which is crazy because this past summer saw, depending on where you were in the valley, between 38 and 40 days when temperatures hit 100 degrees or higher, which is just wow.
Ugh, that sounds miserable. But there was no magic to it, folks, just good grape growing and good soil. Various wine growers credited healthy canopy growth, technological advancements, and comprehensive water management for keeping their fruit healthy despite the heat. The soil stayed nice and moist, and the plants made it through.
Timing was on the grower's side as well. The worst of the heat hit in July before the grapes began ripening, which helped protect them from the worst of the damage. One winemaker actually credited this heat wave for helping to harden the grapes against future heat waves.
Yeah, it seems like the only major effect of this heat was an earlier harvest than last year, but nothing out of the ordinary. And on top of this good news, it looks like grape growers in Napa Valley are weathering storms, both natural and metaphorical. So, despite a declining grape market, the high quality of Napa grapes and long term contracts with winemakers kept that corner of the market from suffering too much or as much as expected.
It also seems like growers are excited about the quality of their fruit. Sounds like red and white grapes alike came off the vines plump, aromatic, and rich. Classic Napa Valley.
Classic.
Oh, the mixed signals of the wine business. Decline, readjustment, reasons for optimism, Gen Z's disinterest, a millennial revival. Much like the political polling that has kept my heart in a perpetual state of cardiac arrest this fall, news about the wine market is hard to parse. Shall we try nonetheless?
Oh, I thought we were about to just get a one-man show, but hey, let's get into it. First, the, not so great news.
The bad news.
Yeah, I was trying not to be too much of a downer, but yeah, but it's bad news courtesy of Blake Gray of Wine Searcher, who is hearing reports that Southern Glazers, the largest wine distributor in the US, has laid off hundreds, if not thousands, of employees. Now, there is no official word from Southern Glazers about this, so this is all just kind of coming in informally. But now, former employees have reported via social media that they were laid off, in many cases via Zoom calls, and many of those employees were part of the fine wine division.
Yeah, in one account, an unnamed employee said that their own supervisor was unaware that the layoffs were happening.
Get this, in a Zoom conference hosted by the US Wine Trade Alliance, one retailer claimed that Southern had axed 3,000 people. But again, these reports are unconfirmed as we record this.
But it is no news that Southern has had a tough year. Wine sales from distributors to retail stores, restaurants, and bars were down 8% in the 12 months that ended in August. On top of that, Southern is facing a lawsuit from the online retailer Provi. And the Federal Trade Commission has made clear their intention to file a lawsuit against Southern for anti competitive pricing, as we have discussed previously on the Foretop. Those legal bills are stacking up.
Considering that Southern is the largest wine distributor in the US and has a lot of data at their fingertips, these layoffs serve as a considerable warning for the industry. Plus, there are now hundreds, if not thousands, maybe, of people out of work just in time for the holidays.
Yeah, it sounds like Rob McMillan, who's a former guest here on the Foretop, told Wine Searcher that he saw this coming after decades of distributor consolidation. The big guys are really good at selling pallets of mass produced, low priced wine, but fine wine just doesn't move quickly enough for them. And large wholesalers are just not equipped to manage lots of tiny boutique accounts. So when the going got tough, the fine wine got going.
Well, this could represent an opportunity for smaller distributors to pick up some fine wine brands that are looking for more personalized service and pick up some out of work sales reps with plenty of chops.
There's even the chance that some of the more experienced, newly unemployed folks start their own distributorships. It'll be interesting to see.
Well, speaking of interesting, how about we finish up with some good economic news? Arabella Milam of the drinks business made the argument last week for some cautious optimism in the fine wine market.
That is if you're in the European fine wine market. While fine wine is in decline, it's prime time for some fine rinds. Ahem. Wow. Anyway, so so while fine wine is in decline, some brands are showing resilience. Krug Vintage Brut 2004 is up 21.6% year to date.
Domaine du Pégau's Châteauneuf du Pape Cuvée Réservé 2012 rose by 21%.
And Sassicaia 2011 saw a 21% increase as well.
And there are more seeing success in a tough market. Plus, a high profile Burgundy auction in Beaune broke 8 world records, so folks are definitely still interested in fine wine.
Yeah, Bordeaux, as we know, is not faring so well, though. It has been experiencing a drop of about 4.4% year to date. So, yeah, it looks like there are ups and downs, and perhaps it's all about perspective. Is fine wine in decline, or is this merely a correction after a gangbusters period of growth?
Yeah, it's kind of like saying, did you get dumped, or did your opportunities to cultivate new and exciting relationships just increase?
Hmm. I think that's called toxic optimism.
Well, we need to pose a question of the week this week. And as we record this, the election has not yet happened. The votes are not yet counted. So, what should we do, guys? There's so many things we cannot really talk about until we know who our next president is.
That is correct. We will either be celebrating or self soothing this coming Wednesday when this airs. So I guess I'm curious, maybe we can ask our listeners like what is their celebratory drink, or if things are going in a different direction, we can ask them what's their favorite self-soothing drink.
Oh, I think that's a good idea.
We're really going to show our political hand with whichever one we choose.
You know, I would bet that most of our listeners could at least guess who we're voting for, but maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, do you guys want to share some of your celebratory and self soothing drinks?
If I get my hands on a bottle of Interlude by Allagash, a nice barrel aged wild beer, I would celebrate with that. And I would self soothe with that, probably. It goes both ways.
Hmm.
My initial instinct is to say like my celebratory drink would be like a tequila soda with lime juice, but you know, I also have Nick's celebratory cider still in my shelf,
Mm.
so maybe I'll open that to celebrate.
Ah,
And self-soothing, maybe like a whiskey sour.
Mm. Normally, I would celebrate with champagne, but for an American election, I would want to support American producers. I do love our bubblies here in Oregon. Some of my favorites are from Corollary, Lytle Barnett, and Soder, but there are many other fantastic traditional method sparkling wine producers here in Oregon. So that's what I would celebrate with. In terms of soothing, I've definitely been self soothing this fall election season with Clear Creek Distillery's wonderful apple brandies. They have one that's barrel aged. I should check for how long it is barrel aged for. I don't even know, but it is delicious. It's amber in color. It's really aromatic. It's really wonderful. But we want to hear what the listeners soothe with and celebrate
Mhm.
with. Well, we kind of already served up some dessert, but Nick, you were just saying something about some literature you've been enjoying and the food and beverage aspects to it. So, Nick, why don't you bring us our dessert course this week?
Oh, I would love to. So, my wife and I are watching Rings of Power, which is like, the backstory to Lord of the Rings franchise. And you don't really get this in the movies, but in the books, it's full of like wonderful descriptions of food and drink and parties. So I'm listening to the Fellowship of the Ring on, I said on tape earlier, like that was still a thing, but via Audible. And there's just the most wonderful descriptions of like the flowing wine and the tankards of ale and all that good stuff. And it's a really important part of the series. They just talk about food and drink and how wonderful it is all the time. And it was like really making me just want to have a nice hearty meal and drink some good wine. And I think if you're looking to self-soothe or celebrate, honestly, listening to the Fellowship of the Ring, narrated by Andy Serkis, for its wonderful food content is another way to do it.
I love an audiobook. I'm going to add that to my queue. Sounds
That's
great.
So cool. Yeah. I actually, a while ago, was listening to this person on TikTok or watching, I don't know what you call that these days. And they were talking about how reading about food and wine through books and through fiction and literature sort of helped them with their eating disorder and helped them learn how to enjoy food in a different way. So
I
think
love
that's
that.
pretty cool. Yeah.
That's very cool.
The healing powers of literature.
Mm-hmm.
This has been the Four Top Podcast. I am our executive producer, Catherine Cole.
And I'm our producer, Nick Toole.
And I'm media and design manager, Ruby Welkovich.
Keelan King is the composer and performer of our theme music. Please visit our website, thefourtop.org, to learn more about us, listen to back episodes, and learn how to sponsor our work, which I think is important to folks. So yeah, sponsor us.
If you have not already subscribed to The Four Top on iTunes or Spotify, please do so, and please leave us a rating.
Hey y'all, this is important. Every rating feeds the algorithm and helps new listeners find the Four Top.
Well, from the branches of a marula tree in Botswana or maybe South Africa, this is Catherine signing out.
From Maine, with its ever-important 4 electoral college votes, one of 2 states that splits their votes. This is Nick signing out.
And from the Millennial Revival in Brooklyn, New York, this is Ruby signing out. Stay safe out there. Thanks for listening. And if you're somehow hearing this on Tuesday, please go vote.